company for seed because peas are good. And so the second crop of peas is growing too. And so this is my Fabiaceae bed, which is the leguminous plants. And over here are my cucurbitaceae, the squash and cucumbers. And then this is all my brassica bed, this back bed here. So third crops on those. And then I have this incredible variety of cucurbita pepo, which is zucchini and pumpkin, same species. But this is variety medulosa, and I'll cut one to show you. It's an ancient zucchini, and it forms very, very long with a bulb on the bottom, and it's really
yeah.
an exquisite fruit. And then back here is that's Solanaceae. So all of my peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, they're all in this bed back here.
It looks like we have some visitors for our program today.
Yay!
People joining us. So those who are here, as you might have seen coming in, this program is being recorded. So if you want to submit questions via chat, you can ask them that way. Or if you're comfortable having your voice and or face on the recording, you can unmute and ask your question verbally. But we're excited to be here and excited to answer your questions. So go ahead and submit either through the chat icon, which you can reach at the bottom of your screen, or go ahead and unmute and ask any questions that you might have. We're here with two master gardeners today, Beth and Kelly, and they're both really excited to be chatting with y'all. So go ahead and submit questions in the way that's most convenient for you, either chat or verbally if you're comfortable being recorded.
I have a question for Kelly.
Uh-huh.
Have you had...
Hi back, fellow master gardener, Olmsted County
Hello.
Extension volunteer.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yep.
Have you had trouble with cucumber beetles on your eggplant this year?
No, I have not.
Oh, you're very lucky.
Yes, I am. They haven't come at all. What I do have that's weird about my eggplant, though, is I've got a really bizarre rogue eggplant, and I'm waiting to see what it comes out at as. The lobes of the leaves are somewhat pointed, and it's almost got a thorn at the end. So I don't know what particular variety it is, but it's one that's morphed as it's grown. So it's going to be very exciting to see what becomes of that eggplant.
Was that from Seed Savers?
It could have been, yes. I think it could be a transplant from them. Yep. I have 4 eggplants in my garden right now. Ping tongue long, oh boy, an oblong black eggplant, purple, the standard, but it's a different name. And then I've got toga, which is an interesting little. It's not Solanum melangina. It's a different species. And then I've got Thai green. So yeah,
a selection.
Yeah, it is a good selection. So that was somebody's question actually. My eggplants have been attacked by Japanese beetles a lot. Do you see that question, Beth?
I don't see it, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what do you recommend for Japanese beetles on eggplant? I know what I'd recommend, but you take a turn now.
I'd go out in the morning, early morning, and early evening with a little pan, the whiter the better, of soapy water. Just a drop or so of water and scoop them off. They're most kind of turgid, slow at those times, and it's less likely that they'll fly off before you can get them into the soapy water. Just don't let them stand for too long in the water or you'll be sorry. It stinks.
Yeah, they don't smell very good, right?
No.
Yeah, I don't even pick them off. Sometimes I just bat the plant a little bit to land. And you're right, the wider the better. It doesn't need to be deep, so use your big lasagna pan or, something wide, and they just land right in there. Oh, we got another question. Please feel free to, yes, this is a live. Please feel free to submit your questions via chat, or you may unmute and ask your questions via audio. If you would like to ask verbally and you are comfortable with being recorded. Yes, we are recording this session, so if you do come on the screen, you'll have a lovely image of yourself like Beth and I do. So, yeah.
I have to say Japanese beetles have been on my mind. We have 2 40-foot birch trees, river birches in our backyard. And
Oh.
unfortunately, one of very favorite foods. And last night I swept up an entire garbage can worth of desiccated leaves. And that's really depressing.
Wow. Yeah.
And they are,
Especially this early in the year. It's just
yeah,
August 1st. Yeah, that's scary.
yeah.
Do you think it's also due in part, though, to the spike in heat that we had early on in the year when the leaves were tender and not quite mature and hardened off for the summer?
I don't know about that. The leaf never seems to bother them very much. They just, I think we have lots this year, at least in our region. I know
Mm.
Jeff Hahn up at the U, the entomologist, says they have hardly any in the Twin Cities. I wish we did.
Yeah, I think the eggs have overwintered for we've had pretty bad infestations in the course of the last 5 years, and I think they need to cycle out ecology. They'll burn
Right.
themselves out. So eventually, we just have to be patient. So somebody else, you can't see the chat, right, Beth?
I'm not seeing.
Okay,
No.
so we've got another question here from Mei Ping. She asks, any way to kill them easily? I think she's referring to Japanese beetles. And May, maybe you chimed in late, but both Beth and I recommend the same thing. Take a wider pan. I don't know if first answer that wider pan with just a couple of drops of soap in it with water. You only need an inch of water, and you can just kind of pick them off, or I just kind of bat the plant into the soapy water. And the key is to do it early morning or late evening, just before it gets dark, because they're less apt to fly away then. That's kind of what we do. That's the Master Gardener approach. Or give them to your chickens.
You can also try putting some netting over. I have a couple of canna lilies, and unfortunately, that's another favorite food. And they just turn those huge leaves into lace.
Yes.
So I'm trying the netting. I think in the future, row covers are going to become more common than not, the way things are heading.
Yeah, we have our Master Gardener meetings are public, right, Beth?
Yes.
So we have on August 11th coming up, anybody who's listening, you can go on the UMN extension space Olmsted County Master Gardener. So that's UMN extension Olmsted County Master Gardeners. And on August 11th, we're hosting a webinar event about plants with the changing climate, our warming climate, what plants are good for that. And I'm wondering if Julie Weisenhorn will be bringing up the use of row covers and that kind of thing, season extension with veggie gardens, because we're quickly heading into zone 5A.
Right.
If you have a south facing rock wall, you're almost 6A. Almost.
Yeah. Except for those rogue winners.
Yeah, those rogue winners. Yeah. Oh, we've got a couple more questions coming in. So this one is, again, this is from Mei Ping. She's active this morning. Hi, Mei.
Hi.
If a busy day, hardly have time to pick beetles. Yes, right. Yep. How about spraying soap water?
It doesn't. It's not nearly as effective as drowning them.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Drowning them is really the way to go. What about an oily water? Do you know anything about like an oily water to kind of, I know that's the whole purpose of the soap, and Japanese beetles are so huge. It doesn't work like it does with little teeny aphids or mites to completely, cover them in this sort of slimy aqueous solution that they can't breathe through. But yeah.
I wondered about that too. But I figured maybe the reason they're advising soapy water is because it's a really common ingredient in anyone's household. I just get to the point where I just pinch them between my fingers. I get so tired of them.
Yeah, I had to do that with, I also manage the Alternative Learning Center garden, and we put in about, 140 feet of potatoes. And I caught the potato beetle infestation just perfectly this year. The eggs were hanging in clusters on the underneath side of the leaves. So I just rubbed my thumb against them to kill all the eggs, and then all the little guys had emerged, and you just kind of rub them in between your fingers on all the new leaves, and you feel like you're just being completely murderous, but your brain is all of a sudden torqued to, well, do I want food or do I not want food? And now all of a sudden you become a part of this ecological cycle, and it's kind of, who's going to survive, and it's survival of the fittest. So that's how I torque it in my mind to not this.
It doesn't bother me a bit. Doesn't bother me a bit.
Yeah.
And they're really distinctive. If you look on the underside of your leaves, you'll just see an orange, small pinpricks of orange.
Yep.
And you got them.
Yep. There they are. So May is asking, what about neem oil? I don't know if the University of Minnesota Extension has any recommendations for neem oil on beetles. I don't know if I'm able to get in. Can you still see me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I'm going online right now, University of Minnesota Extension neem oil, and see what I get, and then maybe I can post a link. A pesticide that is also a toothpaste, University of Minnesota Extension. We've got an article here on neem oil, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this link, and I'm going to post it in the chat for everybody to see. So paste, enter. So there is the link, May, that I sent, and everybody can go ahead and take a look at that. It's a little article that was just written, University of Minnesota Extension. Neem oil, when did this article come out here?
Okay, let me get on.
Looks like a couple of the citations are from the 90s, and that is when neem oil kind of picked up to be used as a toothpaste and such. So, what makes neem extract special compared to other insecticides is its several modes of action. Insects cease eating after ingesting treated plant material, which could cause starvation. At the same time, neem affects the creature's hormonal growth and development, resulting in death or difficulty reproducing. So I'm wondering what strength of neem oil you need to add. Yeah, the unfortunate part about it, though, is that it actually attacks family Lepidoptera, which would be your caterpillars, which form pupa and chrysalli that create butterflies. Yeah, so I don't know. It's not specific to that. So
I have been researching on that, and it seems like there's some advice that if we want to try the neem oil, they suggested to have the pure neem oil that is cold pressed instead of just get any bottle that has some other ingredients out of a shelf. So, but also to kind of do a little bit of testing on the leaves, just a small portion, just in case, not to kill the whole plant.
That sounds like good advice. Yeah. Yeah, I usually get all of my essential oils at the good food store, the co-op downtown. There's other places to get nice essential oils too that are organic. I think Natural Grocer carries them. So yeah, get a good quality essential oil whenever you're going to be using it, especially if it's something that you're going to be ingesting.
Right.
Something not to use ever. And I'm just mentioning this because I've seen a number of people saying how effective it is a combined pesticide called Sevin, spelled Sevin.
Oh yeah, don't use it.
That kills everything, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many of those, malathion, carbaryl. Yeah, we should really avoid a lot of those chemicals. Yeah.
Well, I have another question. Well, thank you very much for your time. I mean, you set aside 2 hours of time to do a Q&A. Amazing. I wish we have more people really, be able to take this advantage. So another thing is the slot that like yesterday when I was doing a garden. Now I use a cardboard in my garden, so I don't have any cardboard in my recycle bin because I've been learning the no-till gardening from Kelly. But yesterday when I kind of turn the try to dig the some hole in the ground and then turn the cardboard up, and I found that in a couple slugs right there. And so I wonder what is your take on that, and how do we avoid that or to treat that because they apparently ate my plants.
So they have done a lot of damage to your plants?
No, I just found out it's in the ground when I leave the cardboard
Find
you
them
know, on the
underneath.
ground, and I found out there are a couple slugs. So my concern is, am I cultivate the slugs and eventually create more issues in the future? I also have a garden that has been attacked by the slugs. So you know, how do I treat that? Yes, I have some plants being attacked by slugs.
Okay. Okay. There are a couple places to start. One, if it's just a few stuck underneath, I wouldn't worry about it so much. It's been such a dry summer, a warm summer, that I'm not seeing any of the extent of damage that we did last year. There are various suggestions, like you can put out a box or something that will pull the slugs in, and then in the morning you kill them. Can't kill them. Those are
For the soul.
yeah. And then there are also commercial baits that you can use that are labeled as they won't be killing any of the insects that you might be concerned about. One is Sluggo. I try not to use those if I don't have to. It's much easier to find them in the evening and early morning and just get rid of them. But if you're having a large infestation, you can also vary the kind of ground cover you have in. You just have cardboard. Do you have straw around the plants, or?
Actually, I got some straw just half hour ago now. So I plan to with Callie's suggestion. So actually this morning I stopped by Callie's house too. I didn't realize that, Callie's actually shooting his her backyard, but I kind of visit her garden. It's amazing, and I thought, wow, what a great way to cover the plants, the soil, to keep them moist, and it's really, and looks very clean and nice. So I will do that today. We will lay out the straw, go ahead.
Not
I'm sorry.
close. Yeah, don't get it too close to the stems or the trunk of any plant, because that will just encourage the slugs or other insects to do more damage. The only thing I would tell you about straw, and we've been using it in the Heirloom demonstration garden out at the History Center for 5 going on 6 years. Voles love it. Voles are and it got to the point that if we were growing a garden this year, I would have started using traps, because they took a bite out of so many of our root crops. And once an animal, any warm-blooded mammal, is taking a bite out of something, you have to just toss it. You can't give it to anybody else. And I wouldn't advise eating it yourself, because both in the saliva and in the poop of any warm-blooded mammal, they carry salmonella. And what's the other one, Kelly? I'm trying to think of.
E. coli.
E. coli. Yeah.
So I agree with Beth on everything that she said, except for that I've got 2 other points that I want to make. I use diatomaceous earth for my slugs, and I cut the package open just a little bit on an angle so that I can use this big container and poof it. I poof the dust out onto everything, and it lacerates the body. It lacerates the bodies of the slug, and they dehydrate within 24 hours. I put a lot of that down last year, because last year was a summer for brassicas and slugs, as we know. It was cool and rainy, but this year, like Beth was saying, it's been dry and warmer, so we don't have so much of a slug issue. And I do put my straw down very, very thickly, Beth. I'm not concerned with slugs and everything getting to my plants. I'm more concerned with moisture retention, and then also forcing a cover crop with my straw, because I want to use it as a cover crop. And then my diatomaceous earth, when I just kind of puff it along the ground, any slugs that come across that, it's like, bam, they're dead within 24 hours anyway. So that's kind of my stopgap measure. And a bag of diatomaceous earth lasts a long time. You can mix it with water, so you can spray it on like your,
Right, the leaves. Yeah.
Yep, spray it on the leaves of your brassicas, and it's not water resistant at all. So if you get a rain, you're going to have to reapply easily. It's not like sluggo or rabbit scram or deer scram that actually intensifies with moisture. This literally disappears and goes down to the ground, but it will lacerate any soft tissue insect, and they will just completely dehydrate. So the larval stage, or that caterpillar stage of an insect that's chomping and chewing on your veggies, it doesn't matter what the veggie is, the diatomaceous earth does a really nice job with that.
Okay, can you spell that name?
Let's see here. Diatom, D-I-A-T-O-M, D-I-A-T-O-M, Aceus, A-C-E-A-U-S. I think, yeah, something like that. Diatomaceous earth. It's basically the crushed exoskeletons of marine animals. Yeah, yeah.
Kelly, are there some health hazards sometimes attached to the use of?
You know, it's very airborne, and those are really fine particles. So you want to make sure you're upwind, wear a mask. Most of us have those on these days. You don't want to breathe it in, just like with peat moss. That stuff needs to stay out of your lungs. Yep.
I have a question. The based on slugs, the good old one I had always heard was put out a jar lid with some beer in it, and that attracts the slugs, and then they drown in it. Is that not good advice?
It works great. What's even more effective is if you take a full beer bottle and bury the beer bottle so that the mouthpiece of it is just only a ½ inch above, and then it's even easier for them to get in, and there's more of a quantity. They just slither right down in there and they drown, and you can, yeah. You might not want to waste your beer, though.
Yeah, I like the diatomaceous earth better, but
yeah,
that's just something I'd always heard growing up, so I was curious about it.
It works, but you know, anything would work. They're gonna drown once they get in there if they slip and fall, or if they just have too much of it. They'll, you know, they can't make it. It's not as effective as some of the other things, obviously, but it definitely works. Another method is they don't like copper. Their slime interacts, and there's sort of a slight electrical connection that happens when they go across copper. So you can get like copper weather stripping and put it around your bed. That can sometimes work, but once it starts to develop a patina, then it's not copper anymore. So that whole effect goes away, and yeah.
It's kind of an expensive solution.
Yeah, expensive solution. I don't know though, if you had some really nice raised beds and you wanted to put a strip of it in there, and every season you could steel wool it clean. I don't know. It depends on your garden style. That's kind of the thing about gardening and solving problems, is that gardens are as individual as people, and the science is out there. The data is out there. We have awesome land grant universities across our country with extension offices, and we've got the mighty University of Minnesota Extension, who Beth and I represent, and the data that they give is sound. It's great, and it's a great place to start, and they've got all that information. Sometimes they give price breakdowns of stuff, and sometimes they rank particular methods that you would use to eradicate something or to take care of a problem. And yeah, they're pretty awesome source of information.
Wisconsin's state extension site and their Master Gardener site are also really good sources of information for this region. So
yep. I also use Missouri Botanic Garden. Botanic Garden, their plant finder is really wonderful to find out information on certain varieties of more of your ornamentals. And I actually like Cornell and Penn State.
Yes.
Cornell. Yeah, they're pretty good too. Don't have any more questions coming in. Looks like we've got a participant, Lady Lee, Lady Lai. Okay.
Lady Di.
Oh, Lady Di. I can't see that far away with my glasses on. So you can certainly type in a question, Lady Di. We won't be able to see you, which if that's what you prefer is great. But yeah, please feel free to ask a question. And I see Randy Peterson is here from the Post Bulletin. So hello, Randy, welcome. And thanks for doing some excellent coverage for us today. If you have any questions for us, you know how to type them into the chat bar.
My another question, if you ready for the next question?
Oh, we are ready.
How about the deer? I don't have a fenced garden, and then even though we have a fenced garden, the deer is still jump in. So I have been told that use the soap to hang the soap on the plant. What do you think?
I wouldn't depend on it. It might work for a while, but I wouldn't depend on it. You need an 8-foot fence.
Yeah, the general recommendation is an 8-foot fence. I will go ahead and also Google a couple of studies that I found this last year because we were working on what kind of fencing we need to do out at the village. And there's one really interesting study, I think the state of Vermont put it out. The deer, because they don't have stereoscopic vision, they can't judge spatially. So, you know, there's a couple of really interesting techniques. And I've really always believed that the only deer resistant plant is a dog. An outdoor dog, because an outdoor dog is going to take care of absolutely everything, but many of us don't let our dogs stay out in the wintertime. So in lieu of the outdoor dog and the financial capacity to be able to install an 8-foot fence, one thing is this ability to just put a 4-foot wire up. So you could put a 4-foot wire up around your perimeter, and you could put, you know, just a flag of tinfoil kind of hanging on it, this piece of tinfoil that would hang. And then if you put another line just inside 4 feet, it confuses the deer, and they're not sure if they can get in and get out.
And
they're not
clear.
sure if the timing, if a predator's going to come and will they have the time. So in a more urban garden that's smaller like mine, my garden's 35 by 55, which is a big garden, but it's a third of my lot. Other people who have a larger lot, more of a suburban area, you could do that nice little perimeter of wire or even string, get rebar and pound it in. And, you know, you can make it look really pretty by putting some kind of a finial on the top of the rebar. If you spray paint it black, it disappears and looks nice, but something really inexpensive, super easy to do on your own. And then you could put black string up and hang that tinfoil or some sort of a thing that just, the deer can identify as something that's in their way, and they're going to look for it. But then run your second line, and I wonder if it could, like, if that second line could maybe follow along over the row of a crop 4 feet in. So it's not necessarily another perimeter fence, but you know, if your perimeter is like this, you know, 4-sided, if you put some 4-foot lines here and there in your garden above your row crops, it's not going to act as a fence, but it's going to act as that kind of barrier that they can get in, but they don't want to keep leaping across these things, and they're going to get confused. And I really encourage people to try that, because this study was pretty good. And let me see if I can find it, and I'll post that in the link.
I can just explain what we used out at the History Center, which is notorious for its deer. We put up an 8-foot fence of netting, and then about 2.5 feet out from that, we put in rabbit fencing. And we didn't know it at the time, but that is a perfect way to keep deer away, because they were in the garden all the time until we put up both of those structures. So, and that's where we put all our our heirloom flower plantings. So it makes kind of a nice border.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I posted that link. It visually doesn't look like the one I'm thinking of, but it is University of Vermont. Let me see if I can find that other one that I read.
All right, so I know that Kelly, I asked you this question before, that I found out that I have the kale bushes, and the very bottom layer of the kale leaves kind of full of the aphid.
Oh,
Is that right? Aphid.
Yeah.
And So it's very disgusting, and they can outspread. So I kind of remove those and just discard them. But I know that once my milkweed actually attract a lot of aphids.
Yellow ones.
Yeah. So how I don't want to, in the end, I don't want to just kill all my kale vegetables. So what would you suggest at this point for intervention?
Well, supposedly, the least invasive is supposed to be a strong jet of water but personally, I've never found that to help me with the milkweed aphids. They're yellow clusters, or they can be black, they can be red. You can always try hand picking them. I mean, just taking like a damp cloth and just wiping them off. If you have to, you could try insecticidal soap. I don't know, Kelly, what other?
Insecticidal soap is a nice one. That's usually what I start with, but I've also used biological controls. Purchasing from a biological control company enough, like trigogramma wasps will eat aphids, as well as true ladybugs. They eat aphids. So you're releasing. What you do is incoming. What you do is needle rate blend and flame flying over. What you do is release those on your infected plants, and they just sort of feast on it. And then hopefully the thing you really want to have happen is they will fulfill their life cycle by laying eggs that will overwinter. So you're perpetuating the biological, this IPM, integrated pest management. You're perpetuating the life cycle of this insect. You've got the host, and then you also have the killer, the prey, the predator insect there, and he's living on through eggs, and he comes around next year just at the right time when your aphids show up. So if you can kind of create that ecosystem for insects, the entomology, as the insects grow and develop their life cycle, I guess life cycle is the word I'm looking for, you set yourself up for success that way.
So wasps are good.
Yeah, the trigogramma, they're very nice. I've purchased both before, ladybugs and the wasps. They do a really nice job. Should we take that Facebook question, Beth? Do we have that written down anywhere? I think a couple people have asked Facebook questions. Can we get that typed into the chat, please, the Facebook question?
Yep, hold on just a second. I know one of the Facebook questions offhand, and I'll say it and then I'll type it, was what do you plant in an area when you've totally pulled out all the garlic mustard?
Oh,
that's
your question, Kelly.
That's my question?
That's your question.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. So ecology automatically just keeps moving. What's going to happen is you're going to have a succession of plants that are going to come into your woodland area. And so you've eliminated the quick little case species like dandelions. They come, they infest everything, and then they die back. So hopefully any seeds will germinate next year. And if you can get everything cut down before more seeds germinate, you're going to be able to eradicate your crop of the garlic mustard fairly quickly, because they're going to want warmth, moisture, and sunlight to germinate. So those leaves that fall this year are going to occlude the light, and any that continue to fall, once they get so far buried underneath that leaf detritus that they're just not going to germinate anymore, and your forest floor is going to become what it is. Hopefully you're going to be able to see some succession of trees coming through there, which would be nice. And if you've got a woodland, you're not going to like what I have to say, but I don't recommend you plant a whole lot of anything, because you probably have deer in your woodland, and there's very few deer-resistant plants except for the outdoor dog. And so there's a few varieties. There's a great publication that University of Minnesota Extension put out. They addressed 30
plants for tough
Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
for tough sites, and it's really a hefty PDF. And it's got, you know, specific deer resistant plants. But I have to tell you, as a landscape designer who's been, you know, making a living out of landscape design for 23 years, I have sites that are out in the country. I have some sites that are in town adjacent to Quarry Hill that I've worked at. There are no deer resistant plants. Deer will eat what they need to eat to keep themselves alive. And that's just all there is to it. And having something that's really distasteful and really doesn't give you a whole lot of nutritional value is way better than not having anything to eat. And they do a good job of foraging when they need to. So I think try some plants once you get the garlic mustard eradicated. And it's not, you maybe have gotten rid of it this year, but there's next year's germination.
Eternal vigilance.
Yep.
Eternal vigilance.
Yeah. And you may even get seed sprouting this year still. So because seeds will continue to germinate. And once that soil is disturbed, the seeds are exposed, and that's when you get germination. So try to disturb your soil, that forest floor, as little as possible.
Little as possible. Kelly, can I ask what you have learned so far this year about what people are seeing in terms of jumping worms?
Oh yeah, you know, I there's some new data out on that. They're kind of all over on our southeast Minnesota woods now, unfortunately, and I haven't heard much about it. I'll be doing a talk at 125 Live in August on that. I think it's August 13th. But so my experience with them specifically was I had a client that I started with in 2018, and we did a fairly large installation. This was up in Foxcroft, right next to some of the woods there, up in that area over southwest, kind of by the History Center. And the first thing we did was we removed turf and brought in some topsoil and put in rocks and put in some large trees and shrubs. We sort of got the bones of the design set and put mulch down for it to overwinter. Came back the second year to put in all the perennials, over 200 perennials. What I found when I started planting last summer in spring of 2019 to put the perennials in is every place I pushed the mulch away, like a foot circle to just scoop out enough soil to be able to put my 1 gallon perennial in, I found 1 to 3 jumping worms in each one of those spaces. So in 2,000 square feet of garden area, you know, times 1, 2, or 3 worms. It was a complete infestation. So I had to catalog that and document it with EdMaps. And of course, I got a hold of Angela Gupta with University of Minnesota Extension. She's a forest specialist. And she has a lot of information on jumping worms as well. But so they've tracked and documented that site. And I haven't been able to go back there. I haven't been asked. The client did send me an email just yesterday about aphids on her milkweeds and just what we got through talking about. So that was kind of funny. Send her some information back. She sent me pictures. What are these? And I said, oh, you've got a really healthy colony of aphids there. And wow, impressive. And I gave her the information of how to deal with it. But yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with the jumping worms. I haven't seen any of the cocoons in the compost. Looks kind of like a puffed up lentil. Obviously it's hard to see, but I've got a soil sieve that I can kind of push the compost through. And we've got some really, I'm gonna plug Olmsted County's compost now because it's really incredible stuff. Really, really great. They just released the data on, I had asked a Facebook question because they're finding that some chemicals are coming through the compost in certain large urban areas. And I specifically asked a question of Olmsted County, and Martin Larson got back to me. So did Mark Tyne. They posted the data for Olmsted County. They test it yearly, and we have some really awesome compost, but no warnings of jumping worms there. And I've been so busy doing community gardens this year, Beth, that I haven't seen any. But yeah, I was really sad to hear that the jumping worms are they're here. They're prevalent. They are here for sure, and it's a bummer. I'm concerned about our woodlands.
Well, it sort of frightens me that in 1 year, your whole, the plot you were working with, the whole thing was infested, because they often tell people that, oh, you must have had them for a couple of years and just not known it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is I know they weren't there because we removed turf grass, and they don't live in turf grass.
Right.
So they came in with the topsoil, or they possibly came in with the mulch. I don't know. We did put in the dyed mulch, the dyed dark brown mulch. That's what the clients wanted. So we put that in. So I don't know where they came from, and you can't really speculate. That's not the way to answer the question. You need some hard science on it. So I'm glad that the DNR and state of Minnesota are on it and tracking it to find out what's going on with it.
Right.
With them, I should say. I'm looking for that article right now, and I will post that. Yeah, here it is. Right here. It was Audubon Society posted it. So I'm going to copy this link right now here and put this into our chat. Okay, there it is. So we've got another question here. We should actually try and find a link for restoring woodlands. I wonder if University of Minnesota Extension has one of those. You want to look for that one and see if you can post that in the chat, Beth? Then our next question is, I'm afraid to plant sweet potatoes to attract mice. What do you think?
Sweet potatoes are very successful in this part of the country. I wouldn't.
You know, that's a pot plant. I think you put it in your pot late winter, and then you bring it outside in the summer, and you keep it going. I would start that inside. When would you start that inside, Beth? February?
You know, I don't actually know, but it would have to be pretty early.
I'm looking it up here. Nothing yet. Let's see here. See if I can find something from Extension. Oh, growing potatoes in home gardens. I wonder if it's any different than sweet potatoes. Obviously a different
sweet potatoes are different. Yeah.
Different type of plant, and they've got a much longer growing cycle, but I wonder if the same thing. Oh, here's one from University of Maryland. Okay, University of Maryland Extension, we'll take that. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
The U has a ton of resources on forest restoration. You can even get yourself certified. So just go to the extension site, and there's just a whole variety. Recipe for forest restoration, North Shore Master Woodland Owner, woodland ownership, a lot of resources.
Okay, great.
There's a PDF on Woodlands of Minnesota, Landowner Handbook. Yeah, it would depend on exactly what you wanted to know.
Why don't I, are you getting those links up and putting them into the chat so we have those? And then I'm thinking maybe those should be copy and pasted to answer the patrons question from the Facebook page.
Yeah. Wow, which one to choose?
So I have my garden. While you're looking there, I'm going to talk about my garden behind here. This is a formal potager. I have it set up in 4 quadrants. I'm a, like we mentioned when we introduced ourselves, I'm a master gardener with Olmsted County. And I have my intern working behind there, my mentee, teaching her all about growing food. And she's taking down the pea vines right now because they are done growing. And I've got pea seeds. We left some pea seeds on the vines that are drying, and then those will become pea seeds to plant next spring. So any pea pod that's dried out actually becomes a pea seed, but the key is you want to leave it on the vine as long as possible. So we've left them on the vine, and they're kind of old and brown looking. I left them on the vine for the tour last week that we had, that was pretty successful, had a lot of people rotating through our gardens. And we're going to compost the vines, but we're pulling the pods off. I've already put another crop of peas underneath, however, and that second crop of peas is planted. I did it about 2-3 weeks ago, and they're probably 4 to 6 inches tall now, and they're going to start using that panel to twine up now that we're removing the old vines. Had pretty gorgeous weather this last week.
Yes.
And nice to be outside as much as we have been. So I had my intern harvest a bunch of beets this morning. So they're looking pretty good. Got a lot of them.
Oh, those are good size.
Yeah, don't they look nice? These are the Detroit Dark Reds from the seed library. So I grew all Detroit Dark Reds this year, and I've got some other seeds sprouting for the next chunk of beets that'll be growing. You can do 2, sometimes 3 crops of those a year if you plant them every, 2 to 3 weeks. But we love beets here at our house. Great veggie.
We have another question in the chat. What is the best way to promote growth of tomatoes?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, you definitely want to have fertile soil. Tomatoes are heavy feeders. They take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. So by adding compost, leaf mulch is a really good way to get them off to a good start. And of course, growing also includes them not getting eaten by things, or getting blights, fungal, bacterial, viral kinds of things. So you really want to make sure that you rotate those tomatoes. You don't want to reuse the same pot or potting soil the next year. You don't want to keep them in the same area of your garden the next year. Now, granted, there are people that would swear, oh my gosh, I have the best tomatoes year after year, and I keep growing them in the same spot. And I happen to know one gardener that's like that in my neighborhood. He grows them in raised beds, and I don't know what this guy is doing, but every single year his tomatoes are gorgeous, and they're always in the same place. But the key is you don't want to put the tomatoes in that same soil, whether it's in the ground or in a raised bed, for 4 years. So you want to have that 4th year, it can return to the 1st year spot. So crop rotation is one of the best things. And they like water.
Yeah, you can use pots instead of actual soil or raised beds if you run out of rotation spots.
Yep, exactly.
Just make sure they're situated in plenty of sun. The more sun, the better.
Yep.
And as soon as you see those blights developing on the leaf, start taking those leaves off, because it just spreads. But never do it when it's rainy or wet, because that also spreads the blight.
And then where do you put those leaves you take off your tomatoes? That's really important.
In the garbage.
In the
compost.
Right. Don't put them in the compost. Don't drop them on the ground for mulch. Send them off to your handy dandy trash pickup place. Put them in the trash can.
Exactly.
So I don't know if I'm going back to beets for a second here, but here's one of these beets that I grew, and you can see these little teeny leaves that are in here. Those are great tossed into a salad, beet greens. Once they get really big, they're not necessarily the tastiest fresh, but you can actually steam them and eat them. So beets just aren't a root crop. They're also a pretty yummy greens. Same family as Swiss chard and spinach, Chenopodiaceae. So spinach, chard, and beets are kind of the same family. Have similar needs. infested by the same kinds of problems if they get problems. Yeah. So here's another question. Has anyone tried Epsom salts on tomatoes? I have not, but I've read the recipe a couple of times, and I actually think University of Minnesota Extension or a couple of the other extension offices, departments have addressed that. So you can simply Google Epsom salt recipe extension, and obviously if you keep with a warm climate extension office, Wisconsin, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Vermont, New Hampshire, any of those places that have a long winter, they're going to have similar recipes to ours. And then also the application dates are going to be similar to ours for the length of the growing season.
I did find one article about vinegar and Epsom salt herbicides that comes from Extension, and I put that in the chat.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah. I had a question going back to what Beth said earlier about the gardens out at the History Center. You talked about you've got the deer fence, and then you've got space, and then the rabbit fence. And you said you planted heirloom flowers there. What flowers did you plant, and did you choose flowers based on pollination for the vegetables and other things you have in the garden?
Actually, we chose them mostly for the color scheme and the ornamental, and all are attracted to pollinators. Most heirloom flowers are attracted to pollinators. That's why we still have them. We planted cleome, several different types of amarys, zinnias, cosmos, a native plant called Zabrina sylvestris. It has another name. Like a hollyhock kind of flower, purple and white striped, and calendula, which is a huge pollinator attractor. So I'm going to miss seeing them, especially this fall, because they're just covered in butterflies. A lot of kids used to come out to have our senior graduation pictures taken in the garden with all those flowers. So flowers are really, to me, essential if you really want to have a diverse group of pollinators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You need the flowers if you want to have a good garden. We just posted on the University of Minnesota Extension Facebook page. You can find that at UMN Extension space Olmsted County Master Gardeners. And we just posted a couple of articles on pollinators. And I think one of our fellow Master Gardeners, Tom Bellinger, is sort of requesting that people count their bumblebees. And I forgot to post on that, but I think it was either 67 or 68 bumblebees the other day in one location on one of my agastache, my anise hyssop. And then I had over 40 honeybees on another one. So I didn't see the honeybees and the bumblebees intermingling on one particular plant. They were sort of doing their own plant, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, right. Some plants are definitely better. Some flowers are definitely better for pollinators than others, and they are essential for our food. We're finding that our crops are not yielding what they used to. We don't have enough pollinators to go around, and it's pretty critical. There's actually a great, for those of you who have Netflix, there's a wonderful series called Rotten, Rotten. And Carrie, I don't know if you can look that up and put that down there, but there's one specifically on honey. And it's quite good. It talks about what's happening with the honey trade and how difficult it is to get the amount of pollinators to the locations where they need to be at the right time for pollination, because our industrial system has such large quantities of certain crops. So in other words, I think almonds are one of the first that start in the spring, our almond crop. When you've got, tens of thousands of acres of just one crop, and you've got to ship an insect across the country to be able to pollinate it, it makes it really, really difficult, because all across the South, we've got all kinds of different crops that are needing those bees to pollinate. You've got Florida coming in, Southern California, Arizona, and Texas. And then as the crops, as our country starts to warm up, then we need the bees, late summer here in the north. So it's really important to have the pollinators where we need them. And with the varroa mites that are kind of decimating colonies for bees, we don't have enough bees to go around. So I'm talking about this a lot, but the key is that we need flowers. So when you're planting your vegetable garden, plant a row for the bees, not just plant a row for the people who are food insecure, but plant a row for the bees too, because bees are becoming food insecure. And if the bees are food insecure, we're going to be in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
We had another question that I didn't use all my seeds from the seed library. Can I use them next year?
Depends. What type of seeds are we? Some, like onion seeds, are really only viable for a year. I mean, if you absolutely need good pollination, that might be a little dicey. If you're keeping them in a cool, dry place, they're probably going to be okay. Don't leave them out in the garage. Don't leave them in your car, because that's really hard on seeds. And if you have a question next winter when you start to grow, you can do a simple germination test. Just take 10 seeds and a wet paper towel. Wrap the seeds in the paper towel. You can put it in a bag and put it in a warm place, like water heat, and wait about a week and count and see how many seeds you have germinated. You'll see the little snaky roots. And if you have at least half of them that have germinated, you're probably okay.
They're lettuce seeds specifically.
Oh, lettuce seeds are good for 4 to 5 years.
Mm.
It's kind of surprising since they seem so fragile, but lettuce, they should.
Yeah, they'll go for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Either way, it's worth trying. My mother gave me just about every package of flower seeds she had this last spring, and some of them were from the year my daughter was born in 1994. But I had my son cut all the packages open and dump them all into a bowl, and we mixed them up. And I've got a special pollinator bed on the side of my house. It's about, 5 by 30, no, 8 feet by 30 feet. And we just raked it all smooth, and we just put all of those seeds in there because you know what? I'm just gonna do this. They're not doing any good in the package. Let's see what we can get to germinate. And I've got a lovely, lovely garden. And the poppies, Beth, that I had posted on the University of Minnesota Extension Facebook page are from that bed. Several different varieties of poppies. One is the Flanders variety that I had mentioned, but I've got calendula, I've got zinnia, I've got some marigolds, which I would never plant, but beautiful bachelor's buttons. And I don't know how old those seeds were, but I've got quite a few really, really pretty flowers there, and they're just kind of going through. I didn't deadhead anything or take care of it. I'll just cut them all down at the end of the season and put some mulch down. But so plant your seeds anyway, no matter how old they are. If you've got a package of 50 of them, guaranteed 1 or 2 is going to germinate, and then just make sure you save seeds from it that year so you can replenish your seed source.
And they may germinate, but then they may not go much further. I mean,
yeah, it depends.
It really varies.
Mm-hmm. I think they found maybe some 2,000 or 3,000-year-old date pits in one of the cave areas in the Middle East, and they've planted them. A lot of them germinated, so they're propagating them now, and they're sort of saying that the punchline is kind of this is what the dates would have tasted like that Jesus ate, because they were from that era that long ago. So some seeds are far more viable than others, depending upon how they're stored and just how long it's been.
But humidity is the biggest enemy.
Right.
Humidity and heat.
Yeah, the freeze thaw is bad, and the humidity, which is why when we find ancient seeds that are viable, they're usually in a very arid climate. Do we have another question here? No, no, we do not. Is that all of them from the Facebook page too? Did we answer all?
There was one from the Facebook page, but I have a few kind of others I can throw out. There was a couple questions about soil analysis and preparation or tips for improving soil. That I know you've talked about rotation, crop rotation, and things like that. Are there any other things that if you're not sure if your soil's good or not, what you should do, or how if you know it's not good, how would you improve it?
The first thing is to establish whether it's good. And the best way to do that is sending a soil sample up to the U. Depending on, I think 4 or 5 years ago, I think the charge was around $17. But it's
I think
well
it's 20 now.
20 now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And they have very good instructions on how to do it. You basically take 4 or 5 samples, your growing area, different places, mix them all together, pack them in a box, and send them off. And they also have information for their laboratory on how to read the soil sample, what the analysis is. And then they'll tell you what you need to apply and in what quantity.
So I just posted the link to the University of Minnesota Extension Soil Testing Laboratory. That's one of the first steps I usually use a lot of times when I go into a new site to just make sure that I know what I'm dealing with. You can pay extra to get like the biological breakdown of the soil, but generally what you get back as a home gardener is you'll get the chemical assay back. And what they're really screening for is nitrogen,
phosphorus
and potassium, NPK. So with those three things, you sort of know what to go through. For instance, if you moved onto a site where they used one of the chemical companies to prevent weeds, that phosphorus hangs in the soil for a long time, and it can really interrupt the growth cycle of plants. Too much nitrogen, you don't get enough blooming and flower set. Too much phosphorus will affect the plant I think it's in the fruiting stage. I can't remember what too much phosphorus does. Yeah, in the fruiting stage. So the chemicals are important, but there's also the component in the question, how do you make your soil better? So like you said, Beth, you're right. You want to know where you start, but also adding organic matter is really a phenomenal way.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah, you can't go wrong at all. Yeah. You want to minimize the amount that you disrupt your soil. You don't want to just be digging it all the time and disrupting it. That fungal material, the mycelium that's in soil, is so incredibly important. And you want your fungal and your bacterial counts to kind of equal each other. The forest floor in an evergreen forest is almost all fungi. It's just loaded with fungi. But you go out into a cornfield, you've got almost all bacteria. A heavy bacteria load in your soil really promotes annuals. So for instance,
Hello? Did we lose Kelly?
I think we lost Kelly's connection.
Right. Well, the other thing about disturbing the soil is that every time you dig in, you bring a whole new lot of seeds to the surface. And all they need is that sunlight, and they're off. And for some common weeds like purslane, which looks like a little succulent, they know that those seeds are viable for 40 years at least. And purslane is one that it has kind of like a spring mechanism for tossing its seeds like jewelweed. So as soon as you see purslane, you want to get rid of it. But yeah, just covering your soil. You don't want bare soil because it breaks down that top layer of soil and you get a crust, which makes it more difficult for some seeds to germinate. So if nothing else, if you're waiting a year to landscape, you can think about putting down a cover crop. So Kelly, are you back?
Not quite yet. We do have another question. Do you suggest dumping molded blackberries in the compost bin? And will they grow berry plants from the compost?
Moldy. I don't think I would put moldy anything in the compost bin. You don't know what's causing the mold. It's better just to put them in the garbage, I think would be the safest. That's sure, you know, somebody has would contradict me on that, but with so many new invaders moving in, there's a fruit fly, a spotted fruit fly that's causing lots of problems with growing berries of any kind and cherries, and they lay their eggs just as the fruit is ripening. And you may open your refrigerator and find that you have white bumpy substance, and that would be the larvae hatching. I did just read a really interesting article that says that one potential predator may be hummingbirds. So if you're growing berries, especially raspberries, if you encourage the hummingbirds to come, that may help cut down on this problem. But they're in the area now. They're all throughout Minnesota. So keep an eye out.
I actually had a question. I've noticed that the hydrangeas we have in our yard change color sometimes every couple of years or from year to year. And I was wondering if there was a reason for that or if it was just part of just the flowers blooming.
If they're changing colors from year to year, that's interesting. Do you know anyone in your family has applied any of the, oh, I'm blanking on what it is that makes the soil color or the bloom color change from pink to blue or blue to pink? You wouldn't expect anything growing from year to year to change color unless someone had intervened and applied some kind of product to the soil.
I'm not sure if anybody has applied anything to it or not, but I have noticed every couple of years or so it goes from blue to pink or pink to blue. I think when we first moved, they were pink, and now they might be more blue. It's kind of funny how that. I was curious if it was from soil or what might be the cause.
It has to be some kind of mechanical intervention. Do you think, Kelly? I don't know why this. You're muted.
You should be unmuted now, Kelly.
Okay, yeah, I'm unmuted. I actually lost cell service there for a while and I had to come inside. Are we talking about hydrangeas?
Yes. And why?
Yeah, that has to do with the acidity of the soil. The more alkaline the soil, the more pink they'll be. If you want them really blue, you're going to have to really make it acidic. And there's not a whole lot of natural or biological controls that do that super readily. Most people use, ammonium sulfate, aluminum, just the,
Which you can find at any nursery. Yeah.
Yeah, Miracle-Gro acid stuff, and most extension people don't recommend that kind of chemical usage, but.
But Livia was saying that she notices the color on a particular plant seems to change from year to year. And short of someone applying something to the soil, I don't know what could account for that.
I think it's pretty close to the neighbor's yard, so I wonder if they use anything on their plants, if it'll cause, if there's any runoff or anything that impacts it. Maybe that could be it.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. Do you know what type of hydrangea it is?
I don't know. It's been here long before we moved in, I think.
Does it have a full rounded head, kind of like what they call the mop heads?
Yeah, they are rather, I guess, round. Maybe like a bit taller than just round. I'd have to look out the window here.
I think, I hate to interrupt, we have some
Sure.
pictures that it looks like Derek is sharing on the screen. And I'm wondering, oh, Beth, nope, we didn't lose you too. Derek, if you have, you can talk to us about what's going on in your pictures.
Oh,
Yep, now we can hear you.
All right, hold on. Wondering what this plant is that I have growing in my garden next to my, I think that's a hydrangea back there.
Yep, that's a hydrangea. That is I know that as I think that's buttonweed. Isn't that buttonweed? It's just your quintessential little ag crop annual weed. So pull it out. You can just cut it. Actually, don't pull it out because you'll disturb the soil.
cut it at the base.
Yeah, just cut it at the base, and you can throw it in your compost or you can throw it in the trash. And you want to do that before it goes to seed and spread seeds everywhere. But yeah, I forget what that particular weed is called, but that's kind of like an agricultural weed that grows in the fields a lot. And I've been trying to look it up since I saw the picture, but I'm looking at buttonweed, which is what I grew up calling it, and I'm not getting what I want here.
All right. So it's a weed, so I should get it out.
Yep.
And then that other picture I had, I was wondering, I saw that out at Cascade Lake. I was curious what that was. I don't know if you saw the previous picture.
Are you able to show that again?
Sure, hold on. Hold on just a second here. Share content. Photos. Just bear with me here. Here it is.
Oh, that's Queen Anne's lace.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's lovely. So the ones that are all curled up on the left, lower and on the left side, they kind of formed a ball. They're starting to go to seed. So wow, major infestation coming next year unless you can get those put into the trash right away.
Oh, this is not in my yard. This is out at Cascade Lake when I was walking around. So
yeah, it's Queen Anne's lace. It's in the carrot family, Apiaceae family. It's really a great pollinator, and I don't know,
invasive, but it's considered invasive. Yeah.
Yep.
Queen Anne's lace.
Mm-hmm.
Queen Anne's lace. Yeah. What is the Latin name on that, Beth?
Oh, I don't know, but there is a variety of Queen Anne's lace, pink to purple, which is not an invasive. There are other ways to get that same type of lacy flower, but if you drive out into the country now, you'll see it everywhere along the roadways.
Another common name for it is just wild carrot.
Wild. I thought that identified it on Google Photos as that.
Yeah.
I was like, how can that be a carrot?
Yeah, well, that's just the thing about seeds. How often do we eat the seeds of the carrot plant? We never do. We eat the root.
Right.
And carrots are a biennial, so they don't make the seeds until their second year of life, but we usually harvest carrots the first year. If you want to grow carrot seeds, you keep that carrot safe in your refrigerator or down in a root cellar in some moist sand where it's nice and cool, and then you plant the carrot in your ground the next year, and then you get to see that flower. So last year, that wild carrot plant didn't have a flower. It's a biennial, so it just had this basil leaf, and then it's the second year, just like cow parsnip, the stuff that some people can get a nasty burn from. Same thing. That's a biennial. You don't see the flowers the first year; you see them the second year.
Which is why it's really important to know what that first year foliage looks like.
Right. Exactly.
You don't have the flowers.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want to have any Queen Anne's lace growing anywhere near where you're planting carrots because there can be problems from cross.
I don't know if you saw my other question I posted, but my girlfriend has succulents, and she's like, how can my succulents die? They're so easy to grow. They must have a way that they die. They were in sunlight. They were getting water.
Too much water probably would be my first bet.
Yeah, it could be too much water.
That's generally what happens with succulents. You also want to make sure that when you put it in a pot, that you have a really fluffy, light soil, because they'll rot.
Gotcha.
I don't hardly water my succulents at all, and they're little teeny leftovers from a wedding last year, and they're just looking so ragged, and they just perk right up when I give them water. They just like survive in nothing. But
Yes.
you know, your girlfriend's similar to my daughter. She actually killed a cactus. Even cacti need water. So,
Once in a while.
yes, once in a while.
Ugh.
We all need a little water once in a while.
Yep. I am also growing for the first time squash, and those things spread out all over my garden. I'd find a picture here if I can, but man, those things are spreading all over the place in there, and attempts to control probably aren't the best idea, but one of the plants has the actual squash coming in. The other one is just spreading, but there's no squash coming on it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big deal this summer.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about it, Beth, or do you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
You have to have the right pollinators at the right time.
Yeah, at the right time. And then also, you know, the squash vines are monoecious. So you've got female flowers and male flowers. And what's happening in particular this year is that we spiked such high temperatures at the beginning of our growing season. It stressed the plants out, and they're producing a lot of male flowers. So it's one of those years where we need one of the hybrid cucumber plants that people grow in hoop houses and greenhouses that don't need to flower at all. The plants are just triggered to set fruit after a certain amount of days without flowers whatsoever. And this is the kind of season where we need something like that because of our temperature pattern that we had. Seed Savers Exchange just did a really excellent video on this. It was just last week on what's going on with the squash this year. Natalie Hoytel with University of Minnesota Extension also did a great article on this. You can go on the Yard and Garden. I'll try and find it and post it in our chat. But she explains how this is happening this year in particular. And then there's one special podcast that talks about it for an hour, What's Killing My Kale, and they do a really great job of explaining why the squash is doing so poorly this year at setting fruit.
But any high temperature between 85 and 90 is probably going to affect the bloom stage. Tomatoes, peppers, if you see blooms falling off, that's probably the reason. We've had a really unusually hot, dry summer.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple other questions come through chat. Just going back to like the Queen Anne's lace. Someone mentioned, doesn't poisonous hemlock look a lot like Queen Anne's lace?
Excuse me. Sorry about that. That podcast I'm talking about that I want to say that I want to post in the chat.
See those guys?
Those are lovely.
Yeah. But this one over here, nothing. You know, that's kind of weird how that one over there does and this one does not.
Well, those are two different species.
Are they?
Well, that's a watermelon right there, it looks like to me, because of the leaf. Don't you think, Beth? It actually looks like a fig.
Yeah.
Not a fig. It looks very much like a fig, but it's not a fig. Yeah, that looks like a watermelon.
Okay.
With those really notched leaves.
Yeah, then deeply lobed, yeah.
How about these green peppers that I'm growing? I think these are peppers. Do I need to get stakes on these?
It depends on how large the fruit is. If you're expecting a sizable one, it doesn't hurt to support that plant at all. Just be careful when you put a stake in to be gentle where the roots are.
Okay. Because these are going to get bigger, I would assume, and get peppers coming off of them.
I have a couple of really neat trellising examples for tomatoes in my yard. I wonder if I can, I don't know if I can snap some pictures but then post them in this chat. That would be kind of helpful. But I pounded in 2 10-foot pieces of rebar that are perfectly vertical. And then I put some tubing on the top ends. And then I inserted a 5-foot piece of rebar across. These are all 1/2 inch. So I've basically got this tall horizontal bar. And from that, I strung twine. So this basically mimics the trellis system from a horizontal rod that you'd find in a low tunnel or a high tunnel, one of the, poly hoop houses that are around here as season extenders. And it's working phenomenally well. I pruned the alternate leaders from my tomatoes so that I have a central leader on some of them. I should actually do a video of this and post a video of it on the extension Facebook page, I guess. But I have minimized my fruit so much. I've never pruned my tomatoes ever in my life, and I won't ever do it again. It was just an interesting experiment that I did this year for twining around these strings. But the tomatoes that I didn't prune, there's like 4 and 5 leaders coming up with fruit on all of them. So I've got 5 strings coming down to some of my tomatoes, which is fine. And then another hunk of tomatoes, my green zebras, which is my favorite variety. Those I have sprawling on the ground because I wanted to see how they would do this year without any type of support whatsoever. And I'm also doing that out at the Alternative Learning Center garden where I manage that space. And we've got 120 some tomatoes out there, and they're sprawling and they're doing really well. I think the plants tend to get sturdier. They're a little rougher, a little stockier, and their stems are stronger. And you just want to make sure that you get that fruit up off the ground. That's kind of the only key there. So it's up to you, Derek. You can let them kind of sprawl all over, or you can keep them nice and neat.
How would you get them off the ground with such a heavy piece of squash?
Oh, I was talking about tomatoes.
Oh, tomatoes. Okay.
Yeah, tomatoes.
But
Yeah,
it
you
doesn't hurt to get your squash off the ground because it's volbate or slugs or any other kind of surface.
You can slide a board under there.
Okay.
Or a rock.
Yep, a rock. Yeah, something that you can just get it up off.
We have another question here that says, have you heard of using cornmeal gluten as weed and cabbage worms killer?
No, I have only used corn gluten meal as a pre-emergent for grass and turf grass, nitrogen supplement, an organic nitrogen supplement. A note on corn gluten meal, the University of Iowa holds the patent on that, and they dispense it to specific contractors. And there are some people that claim locally here that they are selling that product. True corn gluten meal should be yellow. It's little yellow pellets, and it works very, very well. There are other kinds of things that are represented and sold as corn gluten meal, but if it's not bright yellow pellets, it's not true corn gluten meal.
I have one more question going back to that Queen Anne's lace, Kelly. You said like it's kind of near, looks like cow parsnip. Is poisonous hemlock the same thing as cow parsnip, or is that something different?
No, poison hemlock is completely different. It's highly invasive. It's very toxic, but it's also the Apiaceae family. So you have a bunch of basil leaves down below, and then you have a stalk the second year that comes up, and then you have this umbel of a flower, an umbel, umbrella, UMB, an umbel of a flower. So imagine an umbrella kind of like this, and then all the flowers sit on top of all of these little flower stalks. So that umbel forms at the top the second year. And same thing happens with poison hemlock. Angelica, cow parsnip, wild carrot, regular carrots, cilantro, parsley. Those are all Apiaceae family plants, and they all have the characteristic of that umbelliferous flower formation. And it usually happens on the wilder species. They're biennial, so that flower usually sets the second year. Cilantro and parsley, lettuce, celery, they'll set seed that first year.
Okay, thanks. And then kind of going off with, there's Derek's succulents.
Yeah.
See, one is thriving and the other needs a little help.
I think the other one looks kind of dead.
The other one needs some water. Yeah, the other one got fried by something, it looks like.
Well, I've also seen that kind of damage from overwatering. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is hard to tell. It's kind of blurry. It looks like it's an agave or something, doesn't it, Beth?
I can't tell.
Or agave-like. There's not much to look at to tell. Yeah, it's definitely a different kind of plant than the one on the right.
Okay.
Yeah. You could try
the one on the right, though.
Yeah. You could try removing all those leaves, the dead leaves, and seeing if fresh growth occurs.
Sure. All right. I will tell her. I invited her onto this to talk about it, but I don't think she knows how. Not a big deal.
And for the question that was asked about the corn gluten meal, I am pasting the link here to that. It's the research that's done with all kinds of citations, so you can learn a little bit more about corn gluten meal.
And another good source for knowledge is the Rochester Public Library. They have a pretty good gardening department. And Carrie, are they still doing? You can reserve a book and they'll bring it out to your car.
Yep. Just go ahead and put it on hold, and we'll give it a 3-day quarantine and bring it out to your car when you come in or when you drive up. So yeah, I had another question, like kind of going back to, you were talking about, we've had some erratic temperatures and weather patterns and things like that. As things change and maybe become hotter, are there varieties that may grow better now that maybe had grown in other areas of the U.S. before? Or are we going to be needing to change kind of what we're planting here?
It just depends. It's really the length of the growing season, the number of days that have suitable temperatures. We usually get a frost here, last frost, by beginning of May. Sometimes it's much earlier. And then in the fall, it's anywhere from the end of September to early October. And really for a lot of the plants that are grown in warmer regions, you need a longer growing season. But it's quite likely, like Kelly was saying earlier, we're almost switching a complete zone from 4 to 5. So it may happen in our lifetime.
I think we were technically zone 5 for about 20 years, and the winter that we had 2 years ago, that -30, I remember that winter that they talked about in the newspaper of 1982 in January, because that's the year I graduated high school. So it's been 37 years since we've had that temperature. But the reason we stay as zone 4B is because, yes, we can still get to -30. So it might not happen until 30 or 35 years go by, but wow, what a drag to lose that beautiful plant that we're nurturing along for. It's like, wow, I mean, how sad. So, the placement of those kinds of plants that you're like really hoping to nurture along, put them on the southeast corner of your house so they're out of that desiccating northwest wind in the wintertime. And hopefully they don't have really harsh sunlight in the morning too, that warms them up. And then as soon as the sun goes to the other side of the house and it's cold, then they get cold right away. So, because that's shocking to plants too. It's really all about the shelter. Where would you keep your infant baby when you bring them home from the hospital? You need to keep things sheltered until they're hardy enough to kind of go on their own. And 35 years, a really cold temperature can make or break something. So choose that sheltered spot on your property or in your yard where you might want to risk, growing something like that to nurture it along.
And make sure you mulch well in the winter to protect those roots.
Yeah. And you don't want to mulch until after that freeze. Yeah, let's see, 1998? We didn't freeze until December 6th. So we can, that was a really cool year. Yeah, and then in, maybe it was 99. I can't remember if it was 98 or 99. And then in the spring of 2000, we hit 81 degrees, I think, like March 3rd or something. And then in March of 2012, I recall that year we had our last freeze in March. So we extended our growing season by not having that last frost in March. 2 months. Oh, we're looking Beth. Yeah, looks.
Yeah.
Beth, you're sort of cutting out. So can you start that segue over again? You sort of cut out. Or at least you did to me.
Oh, I was saying that when we get cool or warmer temperatures too early, the plant sort of starts to come out of its dormancy and think that spring is here, and you get a lot of tender new growth, and then a snowfall or bitter temperatures come along, and that can kill the plant. Or, winter where we don't have much snow cover for an extended period can also be really hard on plants.
I do season extension with hoops and row covers in my vegetable garden. And it's worked really well. I was harvesting lettuce, greens for Thanksgiving, and then the first week of December this year, it was really nice to the plants just kept growing. Obviously, citrus isn't going to grow in those kinds of conditions. You need a heated, sunny space, but some of those crops that don't mind it cooler can grow underneath hoops. So I recommend that you kind of consider extending your season, like as much as 1 month on either end by doing row covers. They really do help.
I have another question for you, gals. Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
What have you found is the best way? Is it really truly mulch and preen and that to keep weeds out of the garden?
Preen is highly toxic to our water system. It shouldn't be used. It's not
They should take it off the shelves. Holy cow, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we have a free market economy.
True.
Maybe that's unfortunate. I don't know. We don't need to have a micro macroeconomic conversation here, but yeah. Adam Smith.
Alternatives?
Yeah. Our alternatives are a lot of labor hand weeding, disturb your soil as little as possible. When I want to cover a complete area that's weedy, I don't put plants in it right away. I might lay down really thick layers of newspaper and put mulch on top to make sure everything's dead. And then I only disturb the soil where I'm putting in a plant. But the best thing is to just not let those weeds go to seed. Many of the annual weeds will not come back because they just got their one shot to grow. And if you keep them from going to seed, they're not going to spread seeds everywhere. If they do go to seed, you'll have that huge, growth the second year when all those seeds germinate. So just don't let that second crop go to seed. And then when they die, they're not going to come back. So it's about disturbing the soil as little as possible because you don't want seeds to germinate. And then it's about, and then it's about don't let those annual weeds go to seed, and then you won't have more the next year. That's kind of what it's about, is management.
Although you can't depend on that entirely because weeds drift in, birds spread the seeds. But just checking on a regular basis makes a big difference.
Yes. Yep. So here's a question from somebody. Would there be an advantage to covering the dirt in my raised beds for the winter?
As in maybe stopping weeds from germinating right away in the spring?
Or my brain went to as in covering with black plastic so the soil warms up quicker so you can plant sooner? We need a little more information on that, Lady Di. Would there be an advantage to covering the dirt in my raised beds for winter? Or, throwing down a bunch of
cardboard.
I wasn't thinking cardboard. I was thinking straw. Like in late September, throw a whole bunch of straw down, get it to germinate. It would be a nice winter cover crop, and those channels for the roots would be left behind in the spring because the oats aren't going to make it all season. Yeah, to cut back on weeds. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd put a bunch of straw down to cut back on weeds in your raised beds, Lady Di. That question came in. So I thought I saw somebody put a picture on the screen. I think that was my garden. Was that May? May, did you take pictures of my garden when you were here this morning? May snuck into my garden when I wasn't home today, apparently. My son gave her a tour and I saw I could have swore I saw lettuce plants staked up to create seed. And yeah. Did you have a question about that, May?
Um,
We're not hearing you. You're on mute. Now you're off mute, so start again.
am I mute?
Nope, you're good now.
You're good.
Okay,
You
sorry.
can start all
I
over.
was okay. I was trying to send you. Yes, I took some pictures. So I think that's a brilliant that you kind of twine them together. So I wonder. Well, I forgot which picture I sent you, but you have a plant that with a lot of pots on top, kind of but skinny. I don't know what are they. And you also have the tomatoes, but the bottom of the plants pretty much no leaves at all. Just have a couple of tomatoes. So why is that?
Oh, okay. Did you take pictures of those?
Yes, I did.
Great. Okay. So do you mind posting those on the screen? Because I was talking about this earlier and I don't know if you were hearing what I was saying about the 3 different, did you take a picture of all of my tomato trellises? Because
I will try. I will try if I figure out how to post it. I will do that again. Hold on. Let me.
Okay. You had success earlier, but in the meantime, I'll talk about it. So the one with just the tomatoes on the bottom and then nothing else until you get higher up. Those were tomatoes. That's Ukrainian purple. And those are seeds from the seed library, and they had a lot of blight immediately. So like Beth recommended, you just cut those leaves off. So here I'm just removing all of those blighted leaves from my tomato, and 4 feet up, we don't have hardly any leaves at all, but that's okay. The leaves on top are doing the work to help produce fruit, produce flowers, and then ripen the seeds. Oh, good. You got the lettuce up, May. Yeah, go to the tomatoes if you can. So the tomatoes are setting down on the bottom, but I've removed the leaves because of blight, and I've put those blighted leaves into the trash. You don't compost blighted leaves, and you don't leave them as mulch on the bottom.
And you sterilize your equipment if you're using scissors or anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here you can see. So let me.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see. Can you move your cursor on that left tomato plant there? May? There we go. Oh, you took a lot of pictures. You're going to have to send me all of these that you took. Wow. Okay, so here's 4.
How about let me send you photos and you keep talking, okay?
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. So can everybody see there's 4 tomatoes there growing, and you can see the tomatoes on the bottom. Those purple flowers in the front is radicchio that's going to seed, kind of a chicory-like family plant. But just beyond that, there's 4 tomatoes together, and you can kind of see that vertical, those 2 vertical rebars that are going up. I don't know how to share my screen in WebEx or to use my cursor in WebEx. I just know how to do it in Skype and Zoom.
If you want to share your screen, Kelly, there's a little option at the bottom of your screen next to the video on and off option, and share.
Oh, that's open system preferences. The contents of your screen while using other apps. Cisco WebEx. Let's see here. And now May is doing all kinds of other pictures here. So I'm not going to do this because I'm going to get confused and I might log myself out of the meeting. So May, you're sending so many pictures. We want to go back to the tomatoes. But anyway, all the lower leaves are removed because of the blight. But my other tomato plants, which I don't know if you've gotten pictures of, they're very lush. That particular plant wasn't susceptible to blight, or there's just no blight in the soil there. Once you have blight in your soil, you're always going to have blight in your soil. 96% of soil has blight. It's just something that occurs. Don't worry about it. Just cut off your leaves, throw them in the trash. And, the fruit usually is good. Everything's pretty much fine. But so those plants also were ones that I had pruned the secondary leaders off of. So they twined around the string really well and just grew up really straight. Yeah, so there you can see they're just growing up really straight, and there's a lot of leaves at the top. But they're twining that third one over from the left where it looks like there's 2 layers of redder tomatoes at the bottom. You can see that one leader, it's just twining up around the string there. Then you can see all the construction in the back where I'm trying to build stone steps and replace my rock wall there, my historic rock wall that I'm reusing the rock on. Did you take pictures of the other tomatoes, May?
I was trying to find, but no.
Okay, yeah, so that's blight, and Beth nailed it when she answered the question about tomato blight earlier. You just got to cut those leaves off, and they'll look a little gnarly, but that's okay. Fatuma has asked a question. It's my first year growing fruit trees. Any advice?
Oh,
Yes, you want to make sure they get in the ground well, and you want to get them watered, and you want to make sure they are staked. So stakes are pretty important. And to just anchor that plant so that if wind comes up, they don't blow over, the soil ball doesn't tip out of the bottom. You also want to make sure that they're planted at the right height, because hopefully the fruit trees that you have, Fatima, have a graft down at the bottom. And they're going to be grafted to rootstock, either a dwarf, a semi-dwarf, or a, what's the third one, Beth? Dwarf, semi-dwarf? I can't remember.
but you also want to watch out for Japanese beetles because they are grafted to many, many fruit trees.
So growing apples in the home garden. This is University of Minnesota Extension here. I'm pulling up a link for you, Fatima, and I will post it on growing apples down here. And growing apples is very similar to growing pears. They're similar in the way they grow and similar in the way the fruit is. There's multiple little seeds, whereas cherries, peaches, apricots, nectarines, they're considered stone fruits. There's one stone in the middle of them. So those kind of grow a little bit differently. So growing, what is the name of this link? Growing apples in the home garden. So we've got quite a few links here. Are we going to have access to this link page with resources, Carrie, posted on the web page?
Yeah, I've been taking some screenshots, so we'll try and get that up.
Okay, awesome. Sometimes I know for me, I generate reports on Skype for Business or also on Zoom. You can generate a report. Are we recording this? No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So it'll generate a report at the end of it also, which is kind of nice. And then you've just got your chat right there and you can pull everything right out of that. Nice. May, did you happen to take a picture of that really neat squash, the Cucurbita medulosa, which is a variety of pepo?
There was one squash picture. I'm not sure. I didn't see any fruit.
Okay. Wow, we've had some really wonderful interactions. Lady Di has asked some good questions. Derek, it was really great that he got on and showed us some photos too, and he was really engaged with a lot of questions. That was pretty awesome. And then May, you've been certainly asking a lot of questions too and sharing some photos. Pretty great. Fatima, with the fruit trees.
Fruit trees, yes.
Maybe you should stop sharing your screen now, May. Oh. Lady Di is saying that it took her a while to figure out the chat screen. She couldn't find the button at first. Okay, well, you are in now, and we're glad for you to be asking the questions you're asking. This is great.
I'm working on trying to clear the screen here, guys. Just 1 second. Let's see. Do you have any more questions in the meanwhile while you guys, any questions that came up while people are listening, any other questions that you wanted to ask about gardening or about the library or anything, please feel free to ask in the chat or to unmute and chat if you're willing to let your voice be heard on this recording. So go ahead and keep the questions coming. We have just under 15 more minutes if there's any questions. We're really glad that you all could join us today, and we hope that you'll take a survey here that I'll be dropping in the chat in just a minute to tell us how we're doing with these virtual programs. But yes, please keep your questions coming. We're excited to be here and answering them for y'all.
Kelly, I have a question for you. I noticed.
Is this for the Stump the Gardener portion of our program, Beth?
No, this is to illustrate something about food safety. I noticed that it looked like some of those Ukrainian purple tomatoes had cracks in them.
Yep.
What do you tell people when they ask you whether or not it's safe to eat those?
Well, it depends on whether they're touching the ground or not. It depends on whether it's in a private garden and we know that, a warm-blooded animal has, done its business in that area, that kind of thing. I'm lucky. It's my private garden. I know they're going to be safe, or they should be safe. And when I cut them open, I'm going to cut them open carefully to do that. And I also have a very short dog, and those fruits are are at least a foot over the ground. And my Maggie, my little Scotty dog's legs are only 6 inches tall. So I know that they should be fine. Obviously never eat anything with mold on it. That mycelium it's never a good idea to just cut the moldy spots off. Mycelium usually runs all the way through that entire food product. And there's been studies that have shown that mycelium can be carcinogenic. So, you just want to follow food safety, but I would never take those veg to donate to any, the fruits to anybody to share. I'll use them in my home, make salsa, something like that. But they cracked because I've actually watered my garden twice this year, only twice. Once when I put everything in, and then a second time I watered just before the garden tour last week. I did it on Thursday just so everything would be really turgid. But otherwise, I kind of let the plants do their own thing, and I'm pretty sure they split because of that. I watered them at just the wrong time. It was drought, heat, and they were struggling, doing really great. And then wham, I nailed them with a ton of water, and whoop, they swelled all up and they split. So kind of a bummer, but they're not ripe yet. So I'm eager to try them when they're ripe. I haven't grown that variety before, and fruit splitting could just be a part of that variety. I don't know. I just don't want that to happen to my green zebras or my gold medals, because those are my favorite tomatoes. I have Cherokee Purple growing this year, Mexico Midget from the seed library. Were the Cherokee Purples from the seed library this year? I can't remember.
Yes, they were.
Okay, yeah, so Cherokee Purple, Mexico Midgets, they weren't from the seed library, I don't think. The Ukrainian Purple is from last year's seed library. I, just kept them safe, and they're fine. I don't even know if we have any of those left over a second year. We'll have to see if those all went this year. Are those tomato seeds gone? I don't know. Carrie could look in a few minutes on her computer.
I think they're gone.
Are they? So I've got green zebra, gold medal, Cherokee Purple, Ukrainian Purple. Brandywine. Hello. and the one Mexico Midget. What are you growing for tomatoes this year, Beth?
Black Truffle, which is actually a Russian variety, one of my very favorites. I have the Cherokee Purple. I have a variety from Baker's called Pork Chop, which is a small, round, yellow. Another German Lunchbox, which is a perfect slicer for a salad. We also have been trying the tie-dyed Berkeley, the pink and the green. um, Nebraska wedding.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I
I do.
love that tomato.
And then there's a really different kind of heirloom from Iowa called Wisconsin peach. It has kind of a fuzzy skin. It is delicious. Really
I've never
delicious.
tried that one. And
Oh,
I've never tried the first Russian one that you said, black something or other.
Black truffle. I highly, highly recommend that variety. It really produces the most perfect fruit that I've seen
Oh,
on any
nice.
tomato.
Oh,
Not
nice.
prone to cracking. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I'd like to try one this summer if I can. We should do,
Okay.
we can't this summer, but we should do tomato. We should do a
Oh,
tomato tasting test with the library. Are you listening, Carrie? We should do that in like August, have a tomato tasting event, have people that have grown their tomatoes, bring them in. Boy, that's going to be a big one. So there you go. You wrap your head around that one, Carrie, and try to do something like that. We'll see. Or maybe
and
at the
both
farmer's
are the
market,
best.
bring
Yeah.
them. Yeah. So I want to try those, Beth. Last year I grew black vernissage, which was just an awesome, lovely little salad tomato. It was just perfect.
You know,
It was
we tried
fun.
those
But the
and they
flavor,
were,
they were awesome. Prolific producer, beautiful plants, hardly any blight, but the flavor was just not there. But then again, it was last summer.
oh, when they got so much rain.
Yeah, and
Yes.
hardly any sun and not, yeah, it was a brassica summer. Okay, so May found that pic photo of the long squash that I wanted to show everyone. I've never grown that variety before, and it's an heirloom zucchini, basically.
Mhm.
The Italians perfected it uh, to grow for flavor, the best zucchini there is. And I also have costata de romanesco from our seed library.
My favorite. Yes.
Yeah, really yummy. I think we should always keep that variety, don't you? I don't
I
think
think
we
so.
go back to the what was it, Black Beauty? There they are. I don't know if you can zoom in.
Wow.
Can you zoom in on that, May? Yeah, can you see them hanging there? They've
Right.
got kind of a bulbous end,
Mhm.
and then they're curved at the top, and then there's one forming way at the top up in the upper left corner of the screen. You can see the blossom still attached. Boy, that would make a beautiful gourmet vegetable, wouldn't it? Once the blossom
Oh,
sort of yellow, you could kind of do a neat curry batter on the end and then saute the fruit. Oh my, that would be really tasty.
you're making me hungry.
Yeah, I think I'm making myself hungry. By the
So,
way, I'm just going to plug local food here for a minute. Many of you know thank you so much, May, for posting that. Thank you very much, because that's a cool veg that I've never seen before. And Beth, you grow a lot of unique veg, and I'm kind of boring, but I didn't think you had seen that one before.
no, I've seen it in the catalogs, but
Yeah.
never.
Yeah, so it's a cool one. Tonight is the last night that Cameo is going to be open, unfortunately. They're closing down. Just a lot of the construction, the pandemic, a lot of downtown businesses are really having a difficult time, and they do some really neat food there. So let's all try and buy our local food that's here and go to the farmers market. And COVID is affecting so many of our systems. I mean, if we just look at the system the library uses, and the changes that they've seen, since March has been just humongous, and people are working in different capacities there. It's happened in our ag system. It's, our downtown business system is being disrupted. So, yeah, let's take care of our businesses, and it's the residents that are struggling too, but our businesses are suffering along with them. So, do what we can do there. So when you said you were hungry, I thought about Cameo, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's the last night to get food from Cameo. Not that I eat there frequently, but yeah. Oh, here we go. Here's the trellis. So I don't know if Derek is still on, but this is the trellis system. Thank you, May, for bringing this up. It's two vertical pieces of rebar, and then at the very top of the screen is the horizontal. And then all of those lines going down are supporting the tomatoes, because I did not prune those suckers out of there. So you can kind of see what those look like, and they're just really healthy. So,
Yeah,
so this is the first year I've grown tomatoes in this quadrant of my garden. I was able to divide up, I think, 46 rhubarb plants from my rhubarb patch. So I finally got rid of enough of the rhubarb, and I put tomatoes in there. So I think they're so healthy because it's the first year. whereas those Ukrainian purples are kind of on the ragged edge of where I, started the garden a couple of years ago, and I've sort of had Solanaceae throughout that bed for 2 years in a row. So this is the third year, and I think it's just a coming. But thank you for showing that, May. We have got 4 minutes left of this awesome webinar. So much thanks to the library for doing this, and to Olivia Truesdale for
writing the grant.
For writing the grant and bringing this project to Rochester Public Library and patrons so that they could log in and learn. That's a good name, log in and learn.
I like that. That's very catchy.
Yeah. The Stump Gardener thing didn't work.
For those of you guys out there in the audience who might have friends who are curious to listen to this program later, or if you know anybody who might be interested, we will be putting it on the library's YouTube channel in the next week here. So hopefully in the next couple of days, so you guys can watch it again later. If you couldn't remember the awesome advice that you got, or if you want to recommend it to someone else, you can also find our programs for seed saving and harvesting there, as well as the late season gardening presentation. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. I think we've had a really fun discussion, and hopefully you guys have gotten your questions answered. If not, you still have 1 or 2 more minutes here to reach out and ask. And we're really looking forward to continue to interact with you guys with virtual programming. And if you have a chance here, I'm putting the link to our survey about this program in the chat here. If you could click on that and work on that a little later today. We want to hear your feedback as to how we can improve these virtual programs. So thank you all for coming today. Does anybody have any questions before we go? And thank you, and so many thanks to our presenters today, to Kelly and Beth, and for Carrie for helping host this event today. I've enjoyed learning a lot about gardening, and if I get the opportunity to start a garden in the next couple of years here, I have a lot of things to go off of as I start off. So thank you guys for all the excellent information and for your time with this presentation and the others.
It was fun. I learned a lot from you, Kelly.
Thanks, Beth. I learned a lot from you too. This was awesome. So I want to do this. I think we should do this weekly for an hour and really ramp this program up. I think it'd be pretty neat.
Right. I really appreciated the diversity of the questions we had.
Yes. Yeah. And the interest level was really high. So thank you. Thank you, patrons, library patrons, for logging in and learning.
And send us suggestions for other programs you'd like. Do you have any good ideas or bad ones?
Yeah, that'll also, I'll plug our other survey. If you go to rplmn.org/seed, you can find a general survey that can help us learn more what you think about the seed library and give us ideas for what should go in the library and what we can do for programming to help everyone too. So if you don't mind taking a second survey, I'll put that link in the chat too.
Idea.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we've got 1 minute left. Oh, Randy Peterson is gone, it looks like. He said he was going to get content from us via the web, so that's good.
Any last minute questions from our audience? Okay, it looks like it's 3 p.m. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time, and thank you again to our presenters and to Carrie for helping. We're doing a lot of work with this program today. Really enjoyed it. We have one of our audience members thanking us for the great info here in the chat. We hope all of you guys have a great afternoon, and thank you so much for spending the last 2 hours with us. So I'll be hanging up. So take care, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Awesome. See you next time, maybe. Bye, Beth.
Bye-bye.